topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Leadership for Life with Gina Gardner on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Join your host, who is a multiple #1 international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer. She's the founder of Genuinely-You and has 30 years experience of helping people step into their genuine, authentic power. And now, here is Gina Gardner, your host of Leadership for Life.
Hello there and welcome. We've got a great show for you today, and I have an amazing guest, and we're going to do things a bit differently today. We're going to go straight into the conversation with the guest about unlocking your infinite abundance. And most people would love to live an abundant life, and yet they struggle. My guest, Brandon Beachum, has written an amazing book, and I've just finished reading it, The 8 Golden Keys. And we're going to be talking about how you can unlock your abundance. Let me tell you a little bit about him. Brandon Beachum is an entrepreneur, thought leader, author, and host of the Positive Head podcast and the late night styles talk show, Optimistic. Brandon has been a serial entrepreneur since childhood, and in 2011 co-founded what is present day Resort Share. In 2015, Resort Share was named the 569th fastest growing private company in America, with an annual Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies list. That's a bit of a mouthful. Brandon's primary focus today is on helping people shift their perspectives to understand the ultimate nature of reality and create more of what they want to see in the world. In an effort to do so, Brandon released his first book in January 2021, The Golden Key, Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance. Later that same year, when Brandon began the Positive Head podcast, which to date has amassed over 15 million downloads and is consistently rated in the top 5 in the spirituality category on Apple. Today, his primary focus is on helping people like you shift their perspective to understand the ultimate nature of reality and create more of what they want to see in their world. And in an effort to do so, he released the Golden Keys. So we're going to be talking about his work and about the book. So without more ado, I'd like to welcome Brandon Beachum to join me today.
Hello, Gina. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm great, thank you. And thank you very much for being there. I know it's been a bit tricky. So before we get started, I mean, what a bio, goodness me. It would be really great if you could share some of your background so people who are listening have an understanding of where you're coming from and how you've got to this place.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to share. Excuse me. So I currently reside in the Los Angeles area, California, and I was raised on the East Coast in a very, very, I guess, as normal can be upbringing, if there is such a thing, and conservative kind of Christian upbringing, and from a very young age, sort of started down the entrepreneurial path, and that's something that continued, and really, I guess, a big turning point that led me to, writing a book and launching a podcast was. And when I was in my early 20s, I started exploring. I met someone who claimed to have some intuitive ability, and they demonstrated some things that kind of shook the foundation of what I had been raised to believe. So I started exploring concepts outside of like a conservative Christian sort of mindset. And, I can only assume, Gina, because it's my dharmic path to do the work that I'm doing, that, this information would really just hit me like a ton of bricks, where I started sort of exploring the ultimate nature of reality and spirituality, and this idea that all is one, if you will, at a very base level foundational understanding, and that we are eternal beings having human experiences, not, see spiritual beings having human experiences, not human beings trying to have some spiritual experience. Yeah. And as I started to explore a lot of those philosophies and ideas, it's just from there it just sunk in so fully, where I was just extremely passionate talking about this stuff. And because philosophies and ideas and theories and all of these things are great, but where the rubber meets the road is what kind of results do they get for you? Right.
Absolutely.
If I am in a terrible, abusive marriage, you probably don't want relationship advice from me. So, when I started applying a lot of these ideas, the results that I saw from them were, very affirming that, yes, indeed, this is the nature of the situation in which you find yourself. We are one with the Creator, and we're fractals of the one source consciousness that creates and animates all things. And as a result, it's like Rumi said thousands of years ago, you're not the drop separate from the ocean. The ocean is in the drop. And so once I started exploring, like, oh, okay, I'm one with all of this, and therefore the abundance that is in this world is an extension of me in some way. What does the Creator do? It creates. So I am a creative being at my core, and so are you. And and you started just really, it's one thing to understand the stuff theoretically, it's another to apply it. So, now it's been a 25 years of deep exploration of the ultimate nature of reality, and, getting my sea legs, if you will, as I, Mike Tyson said it really well. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. So, okay, this is how it works. And I'm going to show up like a Zen monk when I have faced this challenge. And, then all of a sudden, you get hit by a jab, and you're acting a fool yourself and angry and all those things. So it's really been a quite the journey of applying and understanding, as I like to put it, these core teachings, and then sharing with others has been really the labor of love that has went on for about 6 years since I started my podcast.
One of the things that struck me, and I've read your book, I finished it this afternoon. I have to say it resonated hugely with me, but I love your use of language and the concept of the inner taking control. And it's very much, that's what the Leadership for Life is all about, is stepping into your genuine power and recognizing you're not broken and that you are connected. And, there were so many things in the book. I was taking lots of notes, but it just struck me that we live in a time when things are so polarized. And, I've talked a lot on the show about from fear to love, there is a huge gap in the middle. And we see being played out around the world, people who are leading from a place of fear all the time. And I am hopeful that, through the work that I do and you do, and many of my guests do, is that we can get more traction for people coming from love and getting away from this idea that love is pink and fluffy and it's very weak, rather than actually it has huge strength because you expect the best of yourself and others when you truly love them.
Yes.
But I want to explore with you the 8 keys, because I think many people, particularly those who've started dabbling in their sense of who they are, their spiritual journey, lots of the things will resonate. But what I like so much is the cohesiveness of it, and how that you've used research, and that what I found really interesting was how many of the resources that you'd used were books that I'd read, and it just put things together beautifully. For example, the Surrender Experiment is something that had a huge impact on me. So talk me through how the book came to you. I know it's in the book, but the viewers and the listeners won't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to playfully refer to myself as a thought leader DJ. So spinning and remixing other people's ideas at times, combining them with my own. And it's really fun to sort of play off of what someone else has originally put out there in a way and expand on it. So there's a lot of that in the book. And, what I did when I first set out to write it was like, okay, if I had to create like the keys to my foundational understanding of, okay, if I apply, these are the keys that I've applied to my own life that have helped me to build a foundation and create abundance in many forms and a life that I'm proud of and enjoy for the most part. Now, that doesn't mean there's not challenges. That doesn't mean there's not hardship. Challenges are actually are blessings. And that's a big part of what I think you were talking about a minute ago. Love isn't just all rainbows and butterflies.
Unicorns. No.
It's all one, I believe. The consciousness that animates my form is the consciousness that animates your form. The separation between us is an illusion, and it's all one. We're eternal beings having this human experience in this moment, and it's happening for, the consciousness is synonymous with the word love, right? That is the core of what it is. But without the contrast, that becomes meaningless. Imagine it's all one and it's all love for eternity. There's no other, there's no contrast, there's no anything to give it any meaning. And so that becomes the same as being nothing. So, I like to say, as I put in the book, you've never seen a great work of art without shadow in it. So the shadow is necessary for God to know herself, source, higher self, consciousness, the universe, whatever you want to call it. The unnameable, however you want to try and name the unnameable. It's, it needs the contrast in order to experience, and it's creating this illusion of other in this case. There's Gina and Brandon and the listener, but it's relative truths. From one perspective, we're one. From another perspective, we can argue that we're separate, and many people would agree with that. And they're both true depending on the vantage point from which we are speaking. So once you start to understand this dichotomy, this idea of relative truths, that you can't have love without, the darkness, it is a necessary component to give it meaning. Then now you start to realize, okay, so it's all happening for love at the end of the day, right? It's all happening for good from the greatest and grandest vantage point. And that is a very relieving thing to tap into, because it doesn't mean the challenges aren't there. It doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It doesn't mean you're not hurt or any of those things. But at some deeper level, this is happening for me, not to me. And it's happening for love at the deepest level. And once you kind of start operating your life from life is happening for me, not to me, and knowing this is a foundational operating system and vantage point to navigate from, it's a real game changer. And so, with the 8 keys, of course, it's like, okay, as I've done that and as I also say in the book, smooth seas never made for a skilled sailor, and we all came to be skilled sailors. Yeah. So you're going to get hit by rogue waves. You're going to be challenged, but knowing those things are blessings, it's like, okay, I don't necessarily always see the path as to why this is happening for me, but I trust. One of the keys is trust the mystery, right? I don't know exactly why, but I know my human level consciousness from one vantage point is playing checkers. It only sees and knows so much. My higher self is playing chess. So, if the expanded version of me puts something in my path that I did not foresee or count on or call in consciously, it may be challenging, but I trust it. And I'm going to do my best to find the gift there. And then this is how you start transmuting the lumps of coal in your life into diamonds. Yeah. And so yeah.
I find it interesting, and certainly it's been my experience. I found myself wheelchair bound, but I ran my school from a wheelchair for over 20 years.
Wow.
And the gift in all of that was because I couldn't physically get into the classrooms, I had to find a way of empowering people to take radical responsibility for themselves and a shared responsibility with the school. It was incredibly successful. But I think, it's not the challenge that defines us, but what we do with it. I love your metaphor of, becoming a skilled sailor. But I think the difference for me, and I think the challenge for many people, is that many people are able to recognize the gift with hindsight. Looking back, things were a gift. But I think when you can appreciate them as a gift in the moment of the challenge, without knowing, that's where the real gold is.
That's where you're becoming a master is someone who embraces whatever shows up because they know it's happening for them, not to them. It was put there for them.
Yeah.
And I got chills when you started talking about being in a wheelchair. I wasn't aware of that. But one of the things I talk about in the book is synchronicity and signs and those sorts of things. As you get on this path, how that happens a lot. This book, I actually came to me in the form of a dream. Well, guess what? Last night, I remembered, as you said it, I had a dream about someone in my life being in a wheelchair. And I would have never even remembered it. It was like, when someone said something like, oh my gosh, I dreamed about that.
Yeah.
I dreamed about someone very close to me being in a wheelchair last night. And it came back the instant you said it. So it's like, it's all connected. It's all this moment is connected to that dream moment, is connected to, and once you start seeing those threads of connectivity, it's just so stunning and inspiring. And it's like, you're seeing more, and you realize the more you know, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So
Absolutely.
I'm seeing more, and I'm connecting more dots, and I am aware that there's even so much more I can't see. And that's where this surrender comes in, and trusting the mystery, because, at least I know it's happening for me. And if it's challenging, especially, it's a time for me to, this morning, I almost canceled this interview this morning because of a big challenge, unforeseen. And in the past, this unforeseen challenge would have rattled me way more than it has. And it's just like, okay, all that matters is how I show up. Charles Bukowski, I think, is who said, all that matters is essentially, well, paraphrasing, all that matters is how gracefully you walk through the fire, and so when you start to realize that's the real thing that's happening here, this is testing your resolve and your ability to navigate this with grace and ease. And then it's like, oh, it's kind of like a video game. You pass those levels. You don't need those same tests necessarily anymore. And you get onto a more expanded experience.
I must share a story with you, and it's the walking through fire that's reminded me of it. Fortunately, although I still do use a wheelchair if I go into town or on holiday, I don't use it in the house anymore. But in 2006, I decided to go and do a Tony Robbins course. And he was talking about a course that was going to run in California. Now, I live in the UK. And at that time, I didn't have a travel electric chair. Now I've got one that's in the car, and so I can buzz about, always on full speed, let me tell you. And so I dismissed the course because I thought, well, how will I get there? I haven't got an electric wheelchair. I'll be going on my own, traveling halfway around the world. And I dismissed it. And that evening they did the fire walk, and I was determined to do it. And at that time I could only walk a few steps, but with some help I did the fire walk, and I was absolutely thrilled. Sat down in the wheelchair, and the guy behind me was a double amputee, no legs below the knee. He turned himself onto his hands, and he walked the coals on his hands. He changed my life, and he's changed many people's lives because I've shared that story.
Wow.
I have no idea who he is. That night I booked my ticket, booked my flight, did all of the courses, became a senior leader for Tony Robbins, and now travel all over the world because that man taught me that I was self-limiting. And he enabled me to see that the only limitation in my life was me. And it's interesting, isn't it? Somebody says something that just reminds you of that. And I want to move on to the BBB, because I think we ought to be called human doings and not human beings. And your take on BBB.
Yeah. It's funny, speaking of the signs in plain sight, oftentimes, I believe we're the star, director, lead actor, actress in our own private movie, our own universe, universe.
I love it. Back to the language again, how you used it. Perfect.
It's reflecting us back to us. And so, I start off in one of the keys in the book that Gina's referring to, everyone listening, is the fifth key is BBB. And I start off talking about how if you pay attention, sometimes even people's names reference sort of who and what they are and what their mission is. And I always find it really fascinating. Like I reference this guy, Bernie Madoff, who former investment advisor who burnt everyone and made off with billions of dollars, the largest Ponzi scheme of all time. Or, there's here in the States, this guy, Anthony Weiner, a congressman who got exposed for exposing himself, and it's just like, you can't make this stuff up. So my initials, it wasn't lost on me as I started on my own journey as such a doer, go, 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 high energy. My dad will often reference, when you were like, from the time you could walk, we couldn't hold you. You were like, no, I got places to go, people to see, things to do. Let me down off your lap. And my initials are BBB. And so I've really worked hard at, of understanding, teaching best what I most need to learn in regards to being is such that the present is the gift, that's why it's called the present. And so the only power that you ever really have, which is why you have such huge successes with books like The Power of Now or Be Here Now, because that truly is pointing you back to where power resides, and the past, never was quite like you remember it. Show it to me. It's not here. You can show me like images or symbols of what it was. But it's not here. The future is never going to come exactly like you imagine it.
No.
It's like and yet you're always in this now moment. And one thing that you can find in the now moment is you've always been able to deal with whatever's in the now. So a lot of our, anxiety comes from worrying about the past or depressed about worrying about the future or depressed about the past. Right. But really, all that is pointless to, if you think about it, to be caught up on this projection. Worry is a poor use of imagination. It's a misuse of imagination. You're just projecting and making things up internally that most of the time aren't going to have any semblance of what you thought about. So bringing it back into this now moment, bringing it back to what you can do from where you're at. And, the only thing guaranteed, Gina, of course, is change, right?
Yep.
So if you don't like something in the now, congratulations, it's going to change. You love something that's in your now moment, appreciate it and take it in fully because it's going to change. And so, steering us back, if we're trying to navigate any vehicle, if I'm trying to push on the trunk to make my car go, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense. Where's the gas pedal? The gas pedal, the power is in being in the now. So how do I bring my attention there so that I can really tap into, what's actually real, relatively speaking, in your life?
Relatively speaking is right, because so much is about our perception. What struck me, and as I said to you, the book, all of the book resonated, but within the now, being prepared to look to be grateful. And you can always find, focusing on what you do have. And for me, I think that and maybe my circumstances taught me very much that if you focus on what you can do and what you have around you, whether it's the natural world or just a nice cup of tea, that in that moment, having that gratitude changes everything. And it takes you from, so many people live the vast amount of their life in victim mode, don't they? Yeah. And if you're being grateful, it's very hard to be in victim mode. And the other big one, and we've talked a lot about gratitude, but also forgiveness. And, letting go, forgiving other people, rather than holding on to the bitterness and expecting it to have an impact on the other. And forgiving yourself, not letting yourself off the hook. If you can put it right. But ultimately forgiving yourself, learn the lesson and move on. Because then you've got a new moment and another new moment and so on.
Yeah. There's a great Sufi saying that essentially is the shortcut to more abundance is appreciating what you already have. And gratitude is the doorway, and appreciation is the doorway to more, because we are vibrational beings. That's something that I talk about, from a scientific perspective at the front of the book. Everything is vibration, and that which is like unto itself is drawn. So, you never go to the top of a mountain and see a giant pine tree that you would expect there, and also a desert bush. They're not there. That which is like unto itself is drawn. You're going to see similar things near some that belong together. Birds of a feather flock together. So, if you want more things to be grateful for, drum up the vibration of abundance, of gratitude, which leads to more abundance, which leads to more things to be grateful for. That is the shortcut to what we want, is constantly focus. And going really granular with it. The soft seat under my butt at this moment. My ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years were like on a hard rock. They would have dreamed of having this high tech contraption that is perfectly ergonomical for my body. Like, it did, it's like, and we take it for granted, and so really being aware that exposure can breed indifference, and saying, I'm not going to allow that to happen. I'm going to find radical gratitude for the roof over my head, the controlled climate that I'm in, the food that it's delivered to me, like, flavors from all around the world delivered to me in 30 minutes, without me having to I didn't have to go to India and get these spices and then, hunt this thing down at the time, it's like, it's so much to be grateful for. And what's interesting is once you start really tapping into the things that you already have to be grateful for, that which is like unto itself is drawn. Where attention goes, energy flows. You attract more things. Most people do something like work in order to have something like money, in order to be something like happy, but it actually works from the inside out. There is no out there. So you be something like happy, and then you find yourself doing and having more things that are a reflection of that vibration. Yeah.
That's so true. And so many people, I'll be happy when, that syndrome that it's always in the future, and the criteria get bigger and bigger. Now, I know that time is short, and there are other things that I want to talk to you about, if that's okay. And one of them is that you talk about the fact that abundance is your birthright. Mm-hmm. And I think for many people that, I believe it, but I think many people, that's something that they would find very, very new. Yeah. Talk to us about that principle.
Sure. Yeah, I say in the book, abundance is your birthright, the quintessence of your being, the essence of the essence. It is the core of who and what you are. And so how I get there is, as the whole book kind of lays out in looking at from various angles, that I am one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things. You and I are one, and the separation between us is an elaborate illusion. And so we look at that, and it's like in a very, we go fairly deep down that rabbit hole to say, okay, now let's assume that this is correct, and all evidence pointing to this ultimate truth are indeed the case. So therefore, if and we know, just to use one example, the atoms that make me up as you hear me and look at me now, well, where did they originate? They were born at the beginning of the known universe. They've always been. They lived out a life as a young star, a middle-aged star, an old star, and then died a violent death and strewn their guts across the galaxy and reformed as me. So even from a physical standpoint, we can see it's all one, right? I'm literally made of stars. So as above, so below. So the consciousness, same. And so it's like, if it's all one, it's all extension of the same thing. So when I look out my window and see the trees and the mountains and all the abundance this world has to provide, that's an extension of me in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. So the game now becomes is, why am I only attracting so many reflections of it in my life? Maybe it's less monetary, monergy, less of that than I want. Yeah. Or there's, less of, relationships or health or whatever. Why? Yeah. Well, because you're a creator being. And if you're telling the story that you are cut off from it, abracadabra translates to I create as I speak. I'm spelling. I'm literally casting a spell with my words. Their words are my wands. So that's where the root is you're so powerful, you can turn the faucet off. And so that the abundance is not flowing in a way. And by the way, that's a useful experience for source to have, because it can't know that which it is unless it knows that which it is not. Yeah. And so you need that contrast. My brother, I always share, he didn't pay a ticket when he was in his early 20s. And then he got pulled over years later, and they took him to jail because of this ticket he didn't pay. And he was in jail for like 4 days. He's very sensitive. The last guy you'd expect in jail. When I picked him up after midnight, they let him out after 4 or 5 days. I took him home and made him a Hot Pocket at 1 and 2 in the morning. To this day, if you ask my brother, what is the best meal you ever had? Guess what he says? That Hot Pocket. Why? Because the contrast of his harsh experience he just had made him fully appreciate it. So that's really, if you've had the harsh experience of lack of abundance, congratulations. You've done the legwork to now start to change the channel and start to tune into more of that, which is already an extension of you that you've just cut off because you're so powerful you can actually do that.
And having the faith, the trust that it's going to happen. Now, I'm very conscious of time. So before I ask you about your wonderful offer, are there any things that, that you would like to say about your book and your work that we haven't covered?
The thing I always like to I've been leaving people with is the only thing I've ever been good at is telling good stories about myself and my situation. It as I said earlier, we create as we speak, right? So what stories are you telling about who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve, so start the game. The good news is for you to change your life or to attract more of what you want, it's not by going out there and moving things around. It's by telling new stories. It's rewiring the neural networks in your brain so that you can start to create new pathways that lead to more of what you want to see. And so, a great example I give is people a lot of times get lost in comparison. It's like I can say
comparisonitis. It's more deadly than COVID.
Oh, it's so deadly. Oh, I can never. Of course, Brandon did this. X, Y, Z. Here's why he. Or Gina. Or instead of seeing that person on Instagram that you admire, I could never be that smart or beautiful or whatever. Instead of telling that story of separation, what if it's I'm such a close vibrational match to Brandon and Gina that out of the infinite things vying for my precious attention, it's what I've attracted into my movie, just like, that which is like unto itself is drawn. It's such a close tree on the mountaintop that I'm seeing and hearing it now. So what it represents is that much closer to me. And that story versus I could never do that. It's unity versus separation story, right?
Absolutely.
And so starting to tell that when you see something you like, instead of being jealous or comparison, say, oh, wow, that thing I want, it's so close. Wow. Oh, I wanted this relationship to happen and it fell apart. Oh, instead of I knew I wasn't worthy. Oh, wow. It's always this or something better. So if that didn't work out, I can't wait to see what comes behind
something
that.
Better. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, it ain't over if you haven't won. And so, that's something that I would like to just as a last thought. And then, of course, if it's okay with you, I'd love to share the golden key with the listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm sure our viewers and listeners will be really grateful.
Yeah. So I'll tell you how you can get the audio and or ebook. When I first set out to write the book, it came in a dream, and there's sort of dramatic synchronicity stories I share in the book around all of it, including the cover art, etc. And I just decided, what is the most abundant thing I could do? How could I walk the talk? Well, what if I gift the book? This is the way I call it, the good kind of selfish. If I help you by gifting you my, this is 25 years of deep exploration, trial and error, distilled into 3 hours of listening or 100 pages to read. If I give that to you and it benefits you, well, it benefits me because you're an extension of me and I'll feel the energetic repercussions. So I call it the good kind of selfish. And if you go to goldenkey.gift, GIFT, and you use the key code at checkout, genuinely you, all one word, then you can get the audio and or ebook as a gift.
That's a wonderful gift. And having read the book, it is just full of such, it is a key to open up people's thinking, to open up opportunities and possibilities. And that's what this program is all about. You're the perfect guest, because Leadership for Life means taking control of your life and actually seeing yourself as the leader rather than putting up with what other people give you. So it's really brilliant. Thank you very much. All of the details of how of that and how you can get in touch with Brandon will be in the show notes. But just before we go to the break, Brandon, we Genuinely You is a very proud member of B1G1, Buy One Give One. It's a charity. In fact, there are two. One charity raises all of the money to pay for all of the admin and the staff and so on. And the other supports projects around the world. And I ask my guests to choose a project, and we donate on behalf of the guest. And we also donate for every 100 listeners, we donate meals so people won't go hungry. I think in the 21st century, for people to still be going to bed hungry It's a travesty. But the project that you have chosen is clean water, and that's to help villages in Tanzania with access to life-saving water and putting in rope pumps, and we'll be donating on your behalf. And if you as a viewer or listener are interested as a business person in becoming a member of B1G1, one of the wonderful things that they do is if people come through my code, then I get to know what impact I've had in terms of spreading the word, rather like bees pollinating the plants. And so it's a really great organization. Masami Sato, who actually started it up, has been a guest on the show. And they do great works on every continent in the world. So please, do go and have a look, join it, and do get people to download. Today's show is full of gold. Please make sure that you do. So Brandon, it just means to say thank you. There's so much more we could talk about, and I hope at some point I have the opportunity to have a further conversation with you. But I do appreciate. Thank you. I know that life was a bit tricky this morning, but you showed up with huge grace, and I appreciate that.
It's been my honor and pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and everyone for listening. I believe in you, and until next time, journey well.
Thank you very much. Don't go away. After the break, we're going to carry on the conversation. See you in a moment.
You have been listening to Gina Gardner on Leadership for Life. We'll be back after this quick break. Want to get the best out of life personally and professionally? Are you ready to step into a life which excites and fulfills you? Well, the right place for you is Leadership for Life with Gina Gardner on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. We will share with you stories from inspiring people, a wide range of guest experts, and lots of practical strategies to help you get the very best out of your personal and professional life. Leadership for Life is a radio and TV show focused on helping you live a happier, more successful, and fulfilling life. Join international best-selling author, motivational speaker, empowerment and transformational leadership coach and trainer, Gina Gardner, live every Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Become the leader of your own life. Gina Gardner's #1 international best-selling book, Thriving Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment, provides you with the foundational principles on which to become the best leader of your own life. It's available as an ebook, paperback, hardback, and as an audio from genuinely-u.com, or also from Amazon. Every one of the principles have been proven to work for the countless people who have used them, including the author. Now, let's put them to work for you. If you're ready to discover your true leadership life design, accelerate your journey with an invitation to join Gina for a Leadership for Life VIP Day. Choose your journey of self-discovery where Gina will help you navigate your way to happiness, success, and fulfillment. To find out more, email Gina at genuinely-u.com. Welcome back to Leadership for Life. Here is your host, Gina Gardner.
Hi there. I want to spend the last few minutes of the show talking about practical things that you can do to help yourself create and sustain an abundant, profitable life. In fact, last week I just finished writing a book for business leaders, and it's an intentional journal that is really to help them recognize that the thoughts that they employ, that the emotional states that we are all in make such a difference to what we're attracting in our life, just as Brandon was saying. And so I thought it might be quite useful over the next just a few minutes to set you some questions to think about. So if you're in the car, then you can listen to this again. If you're at home and you've got the time to go and grab a pen and paper, then have a think about the questions that I'm going to ask you, because they are so important. So what does abundance mean to you? Lots of people, that means money. For other people, abundant means that they live a life full of love and friendship. You know, a few minutes before the show, I didn't think that Brandon was going to be able to make it. And I was able to phone a great friend who's going to be a guest on the show later on in a couple of months to say, look, I've only got 20 minutes. Are you able to help me out and come on the show now? She was ready to drop everything. As it happened, Brandon was able to come. But think about, what does abundance mean for you? Because if you don't know what it is, how will you know when you've achieved it? What do you think you're worth? You know, how secure are you in who you are? You know, BBB, who are you being? You know, one of the interesting things, and I've done a lot of work, I work with businesses, business owners, business leaders, helping them create a more profitable business. And one of the interesting things is their attitude towards money. And the attitude that you have towards money, your beliefs about money, are very often installed when you're little. You know, how many of you had parents that say, you know, money doesn't grow on trees, you know, or you've got to work hard, otherwise you'll not have any money, or, you know, rich people aren't very nice. And if those are your beliefs, then they colour the decisions, the choices that you make moment by moment, and they're going to make a difference to your life. So what do you think you are worth? What would you see as abundance in terms of finances? You know, I'm reminded of a story. I was working with someone who had a really interesting sense of what abundance was. A financial trader. They came to me because they were stressed. This is in the last recession. And they had believed that they were going to be made redundant and they were going to lose everything. And in his head, he was on the streets with his 2 children and his wife. When we started to talk about the reality of the situation, and I asked him to do a simple thing, which was to create a budget of what he spent now and what he spent it on. And that was the platinum budget. A gold budget where he didn't go on 4 holidays a year, but he didn't have his expensive cars, but he still went on 2 nice holidays a year and they had a very nice lifestyle. And then the basic budget, you know, the budget that many, many people work on, but plenty to eat, all of the bills paid and so on. When he looked at the budget, he actually had 14 years worth of savings at the platinum level. But for him, in his head, make redundant meant I'm homeless on the streets with my children. His belief system was skewed. And so the danger was that he was going to make decisions that were based on erroneous facts. Once he could see that actually he was secure, and of course there were other things that we did around his own self-worth and his whole way of being and managing stress and so on. But the essence of this is, what do you believe you deserve financially, if that's your level of, that's the abundance you want to work on? And then what are your actions? Because many people who want abundance will give themselves a gift because they're feeling a bit down, and they'll go and buy a handbag or a set of golf clubs or the last bright shiny thing, and they'll get into debt and then pay compound interest on their credit card. So your actions, moment by moment, make a difference. Your choices, moment by moment, what's going on in your head, whether you believe you deserve or not, whether you see yourself connected or not, whether you see that abundance is your birthright. And actually, if you're expecting abundance and you are at one with receiving abundance, then abundance comes. Those of you that watch the show with Michael Lozier, The Law of Attraction, he wrote the original Law of Attraction. He says one of the simple ways to help yourself is to take out of the word don't out of your vocabulary and talk about what you do want rather than what you don't want. So let me ask you a few questions. So what forms of abundance would you most like to unlock, and why? Feeling to what you desire. Imagine that it is already with you. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing in your imaginary place where the abundance is already happening. Imagine yourself as the grandest, greatest version of yourself, the very best version of you. And what does that feel like? When you are at your best, when you are the most amazing version of you, what's happening in your life? And then the last thing, because we're coming to the end of the show, is to think about connection. That everything that you say or do, everything you are being, you are doing to yourself as well as other people. Think about how you turn up, what language you use, what tone of voice you use to yourself and to others. And the final thing that I'd like to leave you with is think about whether you're ready to receive. And I think lots of people have some missing link, that they desire abundance, that they feel into what it's going to be like, but they fail to recognize that they don't feel worthy of receiving. And they put a block up to actually receiving abundance. It's my belief that being kind to other people is a great way of attracting abundance into your own life, so long as it's done unconditionally, not a barter. I'll be kind to you if you give me what I want. That's not what I'm talking about. But random acts of kindness, being there for other people, being of service, I think is hugely instrumental in living an abundant life. Many people enjoy giving, as I talked about in a previous show. They enjoy giving, but they're not so good at receiving. So do go and have a look at the gift. I'm going to ask Roxy as we finish to put up the code to put in genuinely you at Golden Key Gift. And I'd love to know how you get on. You know, there's an 88-day challenge. Try the challenge and please let us know how you get on. Email me at gina@genuinely-you.com. Sending you all lots of love, and please recognize that you can be the leader of your own life if you step up and you choose to be that leader. So have a great week. We'll see you next week, and do be the leader of your own life. Bye-bye now.
You have been listening to The Leadership for Life with your host, Gina Gardner. Make sure you tune in to W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV next Thursday and every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for more Leadership for Life. If you missed any part of this episode or just want to hear or see it again, you can find the archive of the TV show on Talk 4 TV's YouTube channel and the podcast of The Leadership for Life on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, Amazon Music, and wherever you listen to your podcast.